The leak of a draft Supreme Court opinion.
The Supreme Court.
The court that dark money built.
Breaking news at the Supreme Court.
The landmark Roe v. Wade case.
A woman's constitutional right to an abortion.
My body, my choice.
And Leonard Leo, who really is responsible for helping Trump fill the Supreme Court.
A Supreme Court decision with dramatic consequences. The justices ruling 5-4.
You look at the decisions like Shelby County that attacked voting rights, and then you look at the dark money cases like Citizens United. It's not just Dobbs.
The court is not in order. This is Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, and welcome to Making the Case. I have with me in the studio Representative Ro Khanna of California's 17th Congressional District. We've worked together putting windfall profits legislation together to go after the fossil fuel industry's price gouging and working on hearings and investigations into big oil's climate denial fraud operation. Indeed, Representative Khanna brought in 6 big oil CEOs to testify about their misbehavior. But what has made him famous in the moment is the work he's doing, believe it or not, bipartisan work, to dig into the Epstein files. Welcome, Ro, and tell us what's the latest with that investigation.
Well, first, Sheldon, I'm honored to be invited on this. No one has done more work, sometimes without notice, against dark money and on the climate issues. I often say you're the only senator who walked over to the House of Representatives that I've ever had and gave me the idea for the big oil hearing. So I appreciated that, and that was the first effort because of your idea to actually get documents from the big oil and hold them accountable. Look, Epstein has taken on such a big role in our culture because it is a symbol for rich and powerful people getting away with crimes and no accountability. And so many Americans feel that the government just is not working for them, that if you are rich, if you know powerful people in Washington, you can do horrible things and will not have any accountability. But if you're an ordinary person and you speed or you get into an accident, you're going to have the government come down on you. And so it's really about two different Americas. And why is it that we have this elite impunity? I partner with Thomas Massie. We have very different philosophies, but he's a principled person. He's actually an MIT engineer. He's a brilliant mind. And we said, look, let's get the release of the Epstein files. When I partnered with him, I actually thought, okay, this is a bipartisan effort. I'm actually crossing the aisle. Maybe Donald Trump will support the effort. And it turns out that after campaigning for 2 years on the release of the files, Trump suddenly reverses course. Vance reverses course. And they say, no, we're not going to release these files. And Massie says, no, we're going to continue to pursue this. So we got every Democrat on board with a discharge petition. And the House, as you know, is very, very hard to get a vote if the Speaker doesn't want to vote. But you got to basically get 218 people to sign to be able to force a vote. And we got every Democrat to sign on, which is not easy. And then we got Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and Nancy Mace. Nancy Mace is attacking me on Twitter, but she still signed the petition, so I don't hit back. I say it's like just keep the signature. And they showed courage on this issue, and so we're at 217 signatures. The Democrat gets sworn in on September 29th. That will be the 218th signature, and we'll actually force a vote in the House of Representatives to release all the files. The process of doing this has actually, along with the Oversight Committee, gotten for the first time them to release some of the files, about 1%, but at least 1%.
But it's a lot.
It's a lot. It's
the first time. I mean, you collectively, you and your Republican colleagues and the Democrats in the House broke through the secrecy barrier. So while there's more to get, like, big kudos for having been the one who broke through.
And it was definitely a collective effort. I mean, I give credit to Robert Garcia and Summer Lee and the Oversight Committee and to Massie and the Republicans and Comer. First time we get the files. And so for those saying, well, who cares, nothing to it, the first casualty actually was someone on the left. It was a British ambassador. He had emails out there saying that Jeffrey Epstein should not have as long a sentence as he had. So for all this sense, oh, this is partisan, this is political, well, the first political casualty of this is someone on the left. And what we've said is we don't care where the evidence leads. There needs to be accountability. And I am confident that we're going to continue to get more of these files out.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons that this is important is because the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, and the FBI Director, Kash Patel, after making big promises about getting to the bottom of this and getting information out, then pulled a really sneaky trick and decided that what they would do was ask the court to release the grand jury files. And as one of the courts said, evaluating that move, first of all, the grand jury files were only what the judge called a tiny snippet of the files.
And you know this because you have a background in
we do. I
prosecution
used to do grand jury stuff.
Right.
So it's just a snippet, and it's the only part of the Epstein files that is protected by court order. They went to the one place where they needed a court order instead of the stuff they could just distribute. And then they pretended that when they were shot down by the courts, that was a justifiable reason for not disclosing things. And the courts didn't put up with that because the courts deal with grand jury stuff all the time. In fact, two of the judges that looked at this went so far as to say, you know, there actually is kind of a reason for releasing the grand jury stuff. And the reason for releasing the grand jury stuff would be to show how little it is, how public it already was, and what a sham maneuver this was by the government to have a pretense at pursuing transparency when in fact they were pursuing the exact opposite. And what was stunning is in the wake of those decisions, that rascal Kash Patel came back to both the Senate and your side of the building and once again went to that excuse of how they asked judges to release the Epstein files and they wouldn't do it, ignoring the fact that it was a segment of 1% of what they had. And what you've done by getting this stuff out is to prove how much there actually is out there that if they'd properly investigated and kept their promise on releasing, we'd have seen.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just total obfuscation by them. And Kash Patel is repeating what Dershowitz is on television saying, which is, oh, this is all a bit for the judges to release the grand jury. But as you explained so simply and powerfully, that is such a small part of the files. So what are the things we want in the files?
And all already public, according to the judges who looked at it. One of the judges asked DOJ, take this and tell us what isn't public.
Yeah.
And they had to actually go through it bit by bit and say, actually, this was public, this was public, this was public, this was public. And what they came back with is essentially zero non-public information in the grand jury files, in addition to it just being a snippet.
So it's just a shame that, and the reason it's not going to work is the American public is too dialed in.
Yeah.
You know, these types of tricks and obfuscations can work if people aren't paying that much attention. But you have people watching this very closely. When Pam Bondi tried the first time and she did that big public release, it was her own MAGA base that came and said, this is a total sham. These are all documents that are already out there. And I think what people are wondering—
But at least it was a thick binder, unlike the little grand jury testimony.
Right. This grand jury thing really bothers you, Sheldon.
They've really abused it, and they're lying to people effectively by saying that the grand jury secrecy order stops them from producing the information, when in fact the information isn't even in that bucket. It's in their files, it's back at the FBI, it's tapes, it's whatever they've got. But it's not the grand jury stuff, and if it's not the grand jury stuff, it's not protected by grand jury secrecy.
Absolutely. And the other offensive thing is they have not yet once picked up the phone to talk to the lawyer for the actual survivors. And the survivors showed such courage. You know, that Speaker Johnson thought he would get this whole thing to disappear. He adjourned the Congress early, shut it down, shut us down from doing budget bills.
How often has Congress been actually shut down in order to avoid an issue so that everybody could run away? It's not the usual way we do business. It shows how, nuclear this is over there.
I mean, it hasn't happened in my 9 years. First time, usually we always extend into August because we can't get our act together. First time they shut it down a week before. And frankly, his strategy was working in August. People go on vacation, they forget. Yes, it was coming up in town halls. But what changed the entire dynamic is these survivors came to the Capitol and they told their stories about being raped, abused at the age of 13, 14, in tears, having to recruit junior high and high school girls to go give massages to Epstein and to be farmed out.
Let me stop you on that, because Patel just came to the Senate Judiciary Committee and said there's no evidence that anybody was farmed out. There's no evidence that anybody had sex with anybody except Jeffrey Epstein. And we have actually a banker who's been caught and testified, yeah, he took one of the Epstein girls and slept with her. And we have all of their statements saying, hey, if you're not going to release the Epstein list of offenders, we'll put the list together. How is it possible that there's this discrepancy between what the head of the FBI is saying, which is no one was trafficked or made available to other folks, and the witnesses themselves, the survivors themselves saying, hey, wait a minute, I got names.
You know, one way to settle it, Sheldon, is to release the files, right? That would show who's right. But this is why I bring this up, because the survivor's lawyer has seen the files. So people often ask me, how will we know if they doctor the files or we get the right things? The survivor's lawyer has seen the files. And he has said that while there is not a client list, it's not like Epstein had a list of names, okay, these are people who are going to abuse girls. He had a network of rich and powerful people. And as he put it, he farmed out women who he trafficked to these rich and powerful men. Now, some of them may not have been underage or may have been underage, but they were certainly involved in paying for sex. And what we don't know is whether that included people who were underage. But we do know that there was a farm system of people who had sex with these women that Epstein was abusing and trafficking. And the reason that they want the files out is to get the witness memorandum and to get the interviews of these men who did this. The only argument to not release the files, frankly, the only substantive argument is that the Justice Department usually does not release things before charging people. And they go to making two totally contradictory arguments. On one part, they say there are no files, and then Trump can't help himself, and he says, well, I don't want to embarrass people. Well, you can't have it both ways. Either the files exist or the files don't exist. They obviously exist, and he obviously doesn't want to embarrass his rich buddies who may be in this file. And the reason that this calls for an exception to that standard Justice Department rule is because the president ran on it. The attorney general promised it. There are hundreds of people who have not been held accountable. And I believe the American people will be fair. They're not going to say, okay, someone met with Jeffrey Epstein and got some scholarship money for their program. Let's publicly shame them. The American people will be fair about this. We need to have transparency in the release.
When you talk about the Department of Justice promises, there were really two promises. One, there'd be total transparency. They'd put the information out there. And, of course, they've flagrantly broken that promise and told lies about the grand jury in order to protect their breaking of that promise and hide from the consequences. But the other promise they made was that they would get to the bottom of this, that they would investigate it. And one of the things that nags at me is that Chairman Wyden in the Senate Finance Committee developed evidence about not just the human trafficking that Epstein and Maxwell were involved in, but the money laundering and flows that they were involved in.
Extraordinary work he's done. It needs more public exposure, but that work was substantive and gets at the heart of the matter. I mean, it's always about following the money
flowing very often to young women and to suspicious accounts far away. And it's almost like a scene from a bad movie, but the reports of all of those financial transactions of Epstein's and his different shell corporations and entities, they're actually called, right at the top, suspicious activity reports. It's like you don't have to be a genius if you're looking for suspicious information to look at the suspicious activity reports.
Which is the government saying it's suspicious activity. So this is
Treasury.
This is not the senator saying it or me or you saying it. This is the Treasury
This is
Department.
like the official name of the standardized reporting that gets done when financial transactions look like money laundering. And it doesn't look like this Department of Justice lifted one finger to examine one transaction and try to put the financial side of the story together with the survivor side of the story, which is what any prosecutor would ordinarily do. So it's really two broken promises, the transparency promise broken and the full investigation promise broken.
You're absolutely right. And one of the things that Massey and my bill calls for is the full release of the files, not just the witness interviews, but also the files from Treasury. The victim's lawyer, Bradley Edwards, keeps saying you've got to get those Treasury files. Yep. There is a lot of money coming, frankly, from overseas that is suspicious. There is money that is in banks that is suspicious. And even if you believe that there wasn't this huge farm system, there were certainly a lot of people involved in covering up what Epstein did. And that's equally as bad.
Including a very big bank.
Including a bank, a very big bank. And that all needs to come out. And the other thing he said is go after the files at the National Security Agency. So there is something there. And the problem actually of not releasing is it allows for even worse conspiracy theories to emerge, which may not be true. I mean, there is, in my view, illegal conduct and bad conduct, but people then assume the worst when you're hiding it. And I guess, Sheldon, what I have not understood is what is the motive for them hiding it? And people are saying, what force is so powerful that they don't want this out there? It's more than, I think, Trump. Trump's embarrassing thing, the birthday book, I mean, that was sort of baked in with the Access Hollywood tape. I don't think there was a single American who was shocked to learn he dehumanizes and degrades women. But there's something deeper there in a network of people who are powerful, who haven't been held to account, being protected. And that's really what's so offensive to people on both sides of the aisle about this.
And there are lots of red flags flying. And one of those red flags is the very bizarre deposition taken of Ghislaine Maxwell by the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. Everything in the Department of Justice runs through the Deputy Attorney General to the Attorney General. It is the busiest job in the department. And the idea that this guy takes days off to go down and speak to a woman in prison and get a statement of hers. And if you look at the statement and how he took it, it is not an investigative statement. It's a defensive statement. Try to get her to give him material so he can steer away. Yeah. And then, soon as he's gone, poof, she's magically transitioned to a club-fed prison where ordinarily people with her kind of conviction, sex traffickers, would not go. And there's no explanation for any of that, and everybody's left scratching their heads. What the heck is going on there? What is your take on Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche going down personally to interview Ghislaine Maxwell and then her being transferred to a much cushier prison situation?
Well, Blanche was Trump's personal lawyer. And so it's very odd that he would be going down to Maxwell. But they have one code of ethics, which is if you're my friend and you're for me, I'm for you. If you're my enemy and criticize me, I'm against you. That's their ethical code. And basically, if you have that ethical code, it doesn't matter what Maxwell may have done, that she actually abused these girls. And by the way, the victims were in tears talking about Maxwell. That wasn't even the purpose of the press conference. The purpose was to talk about the release of the Epstein files. And they insisted on talking about Maxwell and how dehumanized they felt that Maxwell is being treated as some kind of innocent person when they believe she was equally responsible for the abuse. And of course, Maxwell gives this total flattering idolatry of Trump, rivaling the tech CEOs in my district, just basically sucking up to him and wanting a pardon, wanting a more leniency on her prison sentence.
Well, it looks like the transfer was the down payment.
And why do they want it? Because they want Maxwell basically saying there's nothing else to see. And, of course, Trump had nothing to do with this. That was negative. And, again, this principle that if you are for Trump, then he will be for you. That is how our government is operating, right? I mean, if you are not for him, he'll put tariffs on you. If you're not for him, he'll deport you. If you're not for him, he'll punish you. If you're for him, do whatever you want.
Gangster government. Are there any next steps that you have planned with Representative Massey in this investigation that you can talk about?
we're still talking about 3 or 4 Republicans, and I don't want to give their names. Massey and I say one of the mistakes we made is we got 12 co-sponsors initially on our bill, and we basically handed the White House the list of Republicans to call to
they needed to go beat up.
But there are 3 or 4 who are on the fence, and I'd love for one of them to actually be the 218th signatory instead of the Democrat. We'll get to 218. But then the big question is, will Johnson try some procedure to shut down the discharge petition? He was not successful in the past. I don't think he'll succeed this time. And I don't think he will try, is my gut, because his heart is not in this. He spent 2 hours actually meeting with the survivors, and he didn't call them a hoax. No one who met with them would have a decency to do that. My sense is he will tell the president, look, we've tried everything. They got the signatures. We're going to have a vote. But we have to be really vigilant in those 7 days to actually get a vote. And then we need to get an overwhelming vote so that it comes here. And Senator Schumer already has taken action here to bring this up. You had Josh Hawley and Rand Paul break with their colleagues. So I think if we get an overwhelming
vote. The Republicans
vote,
over here did not want to deal with that. They moved to table it rather than let a vote happen and to try to sweep it out of the way. But I don't think anybody was very fooled by the difference between a motion to table the release of the Epstein files and voting against release of the Epstein files. It's more or less the same thing. But it shows the thrall of whatever the motive is behind all of this, that you can get so many Republican senators who are probably deeply concerned about this situation to say, nope, not me, not going to put my name on that vote. Let's table that thing and get it out of here. We're going to hiding.
You know, the Senate rarely moves on House things until the House acts. But if we actually pass this and pass it with a significant majority, it's going to put an incredible amount of pressure on the Senate to move. And it's going to put an enormous amount of pressure on Pam Bondi and Trump to comply with the oversight subpoena of releasing these files. It's one thing for them to dismiss me, to dismiss Democrats on the Oversight Committee. It's another thing for them to start to dismiss their MAGA base and the Republicans who are out there demanding this. So we will continue to push for the Epstein files. At the same time, we've got on oversight more documents we can get from the Epstein estate. They have a number of these financial documents.
Yeah.
So far, they've been compliant, and we're going to continue to pursue that.
Noteworthy that it was you guys who pursued the subpoena to the Epstein estate. Bondi and Patel, they could perfectly well have done that, but they didn't.
Lawrence O'Donnell, who you and I both have a respectful relationship for, has done more for the Epstein investigation than Kash Patel or Pam Bondi.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, he chased down the Bradley Edwards, the lawyer for the victims. His team did. Bradley Edwards happens to be on before me on Lawrence O'Donnell. And Bradley Edwards is like, look, I've got this tip for these members of Congress. If they listen, all the documents are in the Epstein estate. And that's how we subpoena the Epstein estate, and that's how we get the victims to actually speak out. So
a little bit like the Federal Bureau of Investigation not being able to divine that there is something suspicious in a suspicious activity report, to not be able to imagine that there might be relevant documents in the Epstein estate where all of his documents are. I mean, it just beggars description. What a total hash they made of their non-investigation. And one of the things that does is I think it washes into the credibility of the FBI and the Department of Justice with judges.
I think you're absolutely right. Look, I think they thought the same thing like all of the other promises Trump made, right? I'm going to end the war on day one. No, he doesn't. His base moves on. I'm not going to cut Medicaid. He cuts it. His base moves on. I'm going to bring prices down. He's raising prices. His base moves on. And so they just thought, okay, I made this thing. I won the campaign. Let's put this out there. The base will move on. And they're shocked. They're shocked that for the first time, their own base is not moving on. And I think that's because this gets to the core of the narrative that fueled Trump's rise, this hope gone, cynicism, despair, unfortunately a really toxic view that all of government has been corrupted. And Donald Trump, this imperfect figure, is going to blow it all up and expose it all. And now they're realizing, wow, his folks are actually, this was all a ruse. This was just a ruse to win an election, and they aren't serious about doing any of this. they're not going to get away with this. I mean, it cuts to the core of why some of the people voted for him.
Last question on the subject of not going to get away with this. In the event that Democrats take the House back in the next election, House Democrats now have gavels, and they have the prospect of committee subpoenas. And unlike the Senate, those subpoenas can't be filibustered by the Republicans so that our investigations in the Senate get squelched. So a whole avenue opens up for investigation into Trump and Trump administration corruption. Talk a little bit about what that means for the American people when the House committee can actually do a real investigation so that people really see what's been going on instead of just this MAGA stampede and secrecy binge that they've been on.
It will be a total game changer. Right after this, I'm going to the House Oversight Committee, and I'm going to motion to subpoena Brendan Carr, who's the chair of the FCC.
Yep.
The chair of the FCC basically pressured ABC to take down the Kimmel show, and that's why Disney canceled Kimmel, because Nexstar, which carries those Kimmel shows, has a merger before the FCC chair. So this is a government threatening a media company and getting the desired result because that media company fears the consequences. We probably will not pass this subpoena because we don't have the majority. If we have the majority, we pass the subpoena. Brendan Carr has to come before the Congress. He needs to show all the communication he has had with ABC, with Disney, with Nexstar. We get to find out whether there were threats that your merger would not be approved if you don't pull Kimmel. We get to actually expose the government interference with media and the private sphere. Why does this matter? Even if we don't get all of the details, it is a check on people like Brendan Carr not doing more of the kind of intimidation that they've been getting away with. Right now, there is no check. It's not just about Donald Trump. It's about the thousands of functionaries that he has under him. And if they feel that they're going to be brought before Congress and they're going to have to lawyer up and they're going to have to explain to the American people what they're doing, they're going to be far less likely to break laws in the way they are.
Thank you very much for joining us on Making the Case. If we can make the case to the American people about what the stakes are, and the House and the Senate can do real investigations, I think this era dramatically shifts. A famous Republican once said, it can be morning in America. It can be morning in America under the light of House and Senate investigation into the sorry state of affairs we see right now. So thank you, Ro Khanna, for joining me.
Thank you, Sheldon, and thank you for your work in exposing this corruption for years. You've been tireless, both with the Supreme Court, with big oil, and now on the Epstein matter.
Thank you, Ro.